Hey, what's up guys? I'm BTC. The changes from the PTR are going to be hitting the live servers pretty soon. So today I want to discuss how this is going to affect the meta, not just for the pro player, but for the average player on the competitive ladder as well. Every time there's a major update in hero balance, people are always asking, how is this going to change the meta? Unfortunately, the answer is usually kind of muddy. When people talk about it, they tend to get the average player and the pro scene mixed up and all blended together. This can get confusing because what works for a high-skill pro player will not necessarily work for the average player, and also vice versa. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go over all of the changes and then tell you how it's going to affect both the average player and the pro player. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe because I always make videos about all this stuff whenever it happens, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. The first three characters I'm going to try to rip through real fast, and just so everybody is up to speed, I'm going to quickly also read what the PTR changes were. So the first character is going to be Genji. They removed the attack cooldown from Genji's wall climbing ability, allowing him to engage with enemies immediately after completing a climb. This is just kind of a quality of life improvement, and it really shouldn't have any impact on the average player or the pro in terms of pick rate and the meta. The next hero is Reaper. His Wraith form will now automatically refill his ammo. This is a little quality of life thing. Again, this was kind of actually already in the game before, but you had to do it manually. You would just hit the reload button and then Wraith form. And if you remembered to do that, then when you exited Wraith form, you would automatically have ammo again. Again, just like the changes with Genji, this really isn't going to impact his pick rate in either average or pro player. And next up is Reinhardt. Earth Shatter effective height was lowered from 3 meters to 2 meters, and the threshold that it can climb was also reduced. So while yes, this is technically a nerf for Reinhardt, it's kind of a weird, odd, situational thing, and it's not going to affect his pick rate for the average or the pro player. Alright, so next up, now we're going to get into the good ones here. So next is HANZO. Remove the attack cooldown from HANZO's wall climbing ability, allowing him to engage with enemies immediately after a climb. Just like with Genji, this is more of a quality of life thing. It's not really going to affect too much. But the Storm Bow increased charge speed by 10%, and charged arrows now maintain their charge after climbing a wall, provided that the button is continuously held. So this change is actually pretty significant for the average player. This is a huge buff to his damage output. For the average player on the competitive ladder, games tend to be fairly disorganized. So coordinated tactics like a dive comp generally don't work. It's hard enough just to get your entire team to move through a choke point at the same time, let alone running some sort of advanced strategy. For the average player, ladder matches are often won by whichever team is simply getting more kills, regardless of whatever strategy they're trying to run. So this change to HANZO is nothing but a straight buff. HANZO can kill a lot of characters in the game with a full charged headshot, and the scatter arrow also kills all but the beefiest of characters. If the enemy team isn't running a lot of barrier tanks, then HANZO can actually do quite a bit of damage now and be quite the playmaker. However, if the enemy team is running a Reinhardt with an Orisa, then HANZO's damage will be almost non-existent, as he is terrible at getting through the barriers. Overall, for the average player, I still think that Soldier 76 is a better and a stronger hero to help you win more games, but with these changes, I can definitely see a case being made for HANZO. As far as the pro scene is concerned, I think HANZO is still going to be at the bottom of the barrel with a super low pick rate. In fact, it might even be 0%. The reason for this is because one of the most popular strategies right now is the dive comp. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that, a dive comp relies on high mobility characters like Winston, Genji, Tracer, and Diva. All of those are super hard counters to HANZO. So it really doesn't matter that HANZO got a big damage buff, because the enemy team is always going to be running multiple hard counters, making him essentially useless. Another comp that might be more popular after the patch goes live will be the double barrier with Reinhardt and Orisa. As I said before, HANZO is terrible at dealing with barriers, so he just won't be effective against that lineup either. And speaking of Orisa, that is the next character we're going to talk about. She had two major changes. The first is that her fusion driver damage, her left click, was reduced by 15%. And the second is that her barrier cooldown was reduced from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. So Orisa is going to be doing a little bit less damage, but at the same time, she's also going to be a much better tank. And a quick note about all of that. Blizzard has said that they might change the damage number again because they feel it might have been a little too much, but until we actually see something new, I'm just going to go over the stuff that was on the PTR. Now, for the average player, this means that Orisa is going to be a little bit worse. Once again, it has to do with the fact that the competitive ladder for the average skill players tend to be a disorganized mess, and therefore defensive stuff isn't really used as effectively as it should be. Again, it usually boils down to whoever gets the most killed. So for the average player, the damage reduction outweighs the boost she got in her tankiness, and therefore she's going to be less effective for the average player. For the pro player, these changes make Orisa a lot more desirable for certain team comps. The double barrier or the heavy tank comp becomes pretty ridiculous with Orisa having only an 8-second cooldown on her barrier. Pro players can now use Reinhardt and Orisa to take turns alternating their barriers and quite easily have a crazy amount of barrier uptime. When one starts to get damaged, Reinhardt can take over, and then when his starts to go down, Orisa can take over, and they can just kind of keep going back and forth with just absolutely ridiculous amounts of barrier uptime. And unless the enemy team has a massive amount of damage output, they're going to have a really hard time getting through both of those barriers. Now, the last hero that got changed is Soldier 76. His damage was reduced from 20 to 19. While this is a nerf, it's not really that big. And Soldier 76 is still the best damage dealer in the game. His pick rate for the average player probably won't change too much. It actually might go down a little bit. And in the pro scene, whether or not he's used is going to be entirely dependent on what kind of a lineup the team is running. If they're running a dive comp, then they're just not going to use him. They're going to use like Tracer and Genji. But if they're running the barrier heavy or the death ball type of lineup, then he's going to be the #1 go-to for the damage. Alright, so let's put it all together and look at the big picture. What do we have? For the average player, you're absolutely going to see a huge increase in the number of HANZO players. And as a result of that, you're also going to see an increase in the number of HANZO counters, which is primarily going to be Winston and Genji. Now, you're also going to probably see a slight decrease in Soldier 76 because of his nerf, and people are going to be moving over and trying HANZO. You're also probably going to see a decrease in Orisa. She kind of has a mixed popularity right now, and I think the damage reduction for the average player is going to be perceived as something that's really, really bad and makes the character not worth using. Now, for the pro scene, a lot of it is going to remain largely the same. The dive comp will still be hugely popular, but there might actually be an increase in the double barrier comp now that Orisa has a lot more tanking power. Now, unfortunately, if we do see an increase in the Reinhardt plus Orisa team comps, that means that tournament games are going to slow down quite a bit. And we're going to see round after round of teams just basically shooting at enemy barriers, and that's going to be about it. It's probably going to make the game a lot slower, and it's probably going to make it a little bit more boring, unfortunately. Now, if that does happen, though, you might actually see some of the Soldier 76s getting swapped out for Bastion just so that they can tear down the enemy barriers a little bit faster. I think that's about it. Most of the other characters are probably going to remain about the same. So what do you guys think about all this? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to check out the Discord server where you can join the community and find other players to group with. The link for that is down in the description. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button. Remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault. Also, special thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this all possible. If you'd like to see what kind of cool rewards you can get for supporting the channel, check the links on screen and down below.